So cool to hear what is happening around the world. Real quick, I want to do something to get a little energy in the room, kind of get us loose a little bit. And so can I get one clap? One clap. Can I get two claps? Can I get two claps? All right, here's where it gets spicy, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is do a Ric Flair. Now, here's how you do that properly, okay? When you Ric Flair, you pop up, not down. Let me demonstrate. Woo! Woo. You see, woo sounds sad. Woo sounds energizing, okay? Can I get a Ric Flair? Come on, you sound good. Tell your neighbor, you sound good. You sound good, yeah. All right, we're about to put this together like a spicy chicken sandwich deluxe, large fry, cookies and cream ice cream, and a chocolate chip cookie. That's 15,000 calories. Let me get two claps and a Ric Flair. Let me get two claps and a Ric Flair. If you are excited to be in church this morning, let me get two claps and a Ric Flair. So when I lived in Atlanta, I had a group of friends, and we had a group text message chain together. I don't know why I said that like I was 75 years old. I don't know what happened there. I will blame the energy drink that I drank this morning. So we had a group text. Let me show you my friends. This was the crew. This night was a very important night because we were celebrating my brother's 29th birthday. Okay, it was a really, really big night. But this night almost didn't happen. And the reason I say that will be shown in the next screen. So on a Wednesday morning, my brother sends this to us. On September 27th, 51 days from now, I will be turning 29. I do not want to celebrate my birthday. I also will be going ghost. I will spend that day in prayer and meditation. I will send reminders at the end of this month and the beginning of September and the week of. Yes, my brother's a little bit of a drama queen, but he gave me permission to share this, and he ended it with blessings. That's hilarious because that's how my dad texts me. He's like, hey, are you coming over for dinner? This is dad, blessings. So Kevin adopted that at 29. So I respond, this is from his then girlfriend, now wife's phone vantage. So I respond, can we celebrate the day before or the day after? Because again, he's a drama queen. He loves to be celebrated. So I was trying to find a way to meet his needs while not doing what he was asking us to do. And he responded, absolutely not, but thank you for asking. Also, for the sake of clarity, because clarity is kindness, I will not be accepting gifts. Thank you again for your cooperation. Once again, he ended it with blessings. Okay. Now, you may be asking yourself, why would a 28-year-old young man send a text message 51 days before his birthday to a group of 21 friends to say, I don't want to celebrate my birthday in 51 days? Well, he was dating a young lady named Sarah, the mother of his two beautiful children, my favorite nieces in the world, the best thing that's ever happened to him. But back then, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. And in that time, Kevin and I were preaching a lot at different locations. And in a casual conversation with no real prompting, she was like, you know, Kev, I really like the way your sister preaches better than you. Now, here's the thing. As a middle child who always is asking for attention, being someone's favorite is my favorite thing. So as devastating as this news was for Kevin, it brought me great joy. It brought me so much happiness. And here's the thing about that moment, and here's the thing about that conversation, is that context matters, right? Context matters. Context helps us understand why people are the way that they are. And the reason why my sister-in-law, my brother's girlfriend, said this is because she just doesn't see a lot of female preachers. And so, like, to have a woman preaching consistently was something that brought her great joy. So it wasn't like, hey, Kevin, you suck. You should never preach again. You're not talented. It was like, I just like seeing someone like me on the stage. Right, I just like seeing someone that represents me from the stage, and it means something to me to see someone exemplify what it looks like for someone like me to be up there, right? And so one of the great things that we as believers get invited to being a part of is we get invited to being like Jesus. We get invited to being like Jesus. And like Kevin, Jesus sometimes says things that I don't quite understand until context. context, okay? So a few weeks ago, or actually not a few weeks ago, a few days ago, Pastor Rob preached the message, and he referenced a verse found in John chapter 17 that I found really strange, but it made a lot more sense with context. So in John chapter 20, verse 17, just risen from the dead, a woman named Mary is going to his gravesite to pour spices and perfumes on him, and she sees Jesus for the first time living and breathing, and she's freaking out, and so she's hugging him and holding him, and she's super excited. And then Jesus says this to her. He says, "Don't hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." And I asked myself, what is so important about Jesus ascending that he would not allow his friend to celebrate with him, to celebrate his life and to celebrate his existence? The answer is found in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 14 through 16. It says this: "Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith that we profess. For we do not have a high priest who's unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, and yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." All right, so I'm going to give a little context, then I'm going to preach a little bit, tell a couple funny stories, tell a sad story, and then we'll end with a song. Okay, that's kind of how the flow is going to go this morning. The writer in Hebrews says the phrase high priest. And so if you had not grown up in church or you haven't grown up in Jewish culture, you may be asking yourself, what is a high priest, right? Like, I was going to make a joke that we're not ready for today. Okay, so someone got it. Okay. So when Israel had escaped from slavery in Egypt, God had to establish a way for them to learn how to worship him. Lived in Egypt, they worshiped all different sorts of gods, and they would do all different sorts of sacrifices. But when they escaped from slavery, God had to establish a way for Israel to worship him properly. One of the ways that he did that, it was he assigned a man from a family that would be his representative to the nation about God's desires for them, and he would be a representative to God for the needs of the nation, right? So in the same way that, like, if you hire a lawyer, like, they're the ones that are speaking to the judge on your behalf and translating back to you what the judge is saying to you. Does that make sense? And so what the high priest would do once a year is that he would offer a sacrifice for the mistakes and misbehaviors of the nation, and God would accept that sacrifice and forgive the nation. Okay, so that was the thing that the high priest did. So the high priest represented God to the nation and the nation back to God, right? And then he would also offer sacrifices for the forgiveness of the bad behaviors and the mistakes of the nation. We all tracking? Bet. Okay, so now this is what the writer of Hebrews is saying. So when the high priest would go offer these sacrifices, he would go into a temple. And in that temple, there were layers and layers of spaces that you were supposed to go. But there was one room called the Holy of Holies, where the presence of God was so tangible that if the high priest had not offered sacrifices for his own sins and entered into the Holy of Holies, he would die, which is a whole conversation for a different day. If he offered sacrifices for his sins, then he'd be able to enter into the Holy of Holies, offer the sacrifice for the people, and then everything would kind of be copacetic and good. The writer of Hebrews is saying that Jesus has now taken the place of that high priest. And when the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies, they would describe it as him ascending or entering into the presence of God. So what he was saying is that when Jesus died and rose from the grave, is that he ascended into the actual physical, spiritual throne room of God in heaven. All right, now that is all the context we need. And let me tell you what it means for you. The first thing that it means is that because of what Jesus did on the cross, and because Jesus ascended into heaven, we now have access to the presence of God. So Hebrews 4:16 says, "Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." When I grew up in my parents' household, one of the rooms that was off limits when they weren't there was their bedroom. I kind of wish it was off limits when they were there too, but that's a different conversation for a different day. And so because their bedroom was where all the cool stuff was, birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, random cash, important documents, whatever, right? And so like whenever we would want to go in there, we always had to be granted permission to have access to that space. And back in the day, entering God's presence required a different level of permission. But now we, as the people of God, because of the sacrifice of Jesus, we get to enter into the presence of God anytime we want to. We get to be in places like this where we get to sing songs to God and focus our attention on him, and he shows up for us. The presence of God is no longer held in a specific location, but it's carried by his people. So because Jesus ascended, we have access. The second thing that we have because of what Jesus did is that we have confidence. We can enter into God's presence with confidence because Jesus already paid the price for us. One of the things that I have found in my life is that there are times that when I mess up consistently, I feel like that I don't have permission to go to God for things. I feel like I have to earn my way back into his presence. And the reality of it is that I don't have to pay the price for something that Jesus already done. I can enter in with a confidence knowing that it's already done for me. The third thing that we get is that we get empathy. Hebrews says this. We do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way. We have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, and yet did not sin. At the birth of Jesus, he identified with our humanity. In the life of Jesus, to identify with our temptation and represent to us what it looks like to live in unison with him. In his betrayal and in his arrest, he illustrated what happens when someone's personal betrayal, religious disappointment, and cultural failures can crush someone's soul. In his crucifixion, he suffered for the sake of the world. In his resurrection, he demonstrated the overcoming power that he carried on the inside of us, that regardless of the darkness and disappointment we face, we have power to overcome. In every phase of God's existence, in every phase of Jesus' existence, he empathizes with us. So if you ever find yourself looking at your finances and you're overwhelmed by trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, we have a high priest that empathizes with us. If you come from a family story that's complicated and painful, we have a high priest that empathizes with us. Can you imagine being 15 or 16 years old, engaged to someone and finding out that you're pregnant? And the reason you say that you're pregnant is because God did it. That's a weird conversation, but that's, again, for a different day. And there comes a moment in Jesus' life where he is back in his hometown, the hometown where they found out that his mom was pregnant with a child that was not his dad's. And Jesus is trying to do miracles, and it says that, wait, aren't you the son of Mary? Them basically saying, we know that you're not of a legitimate birth. So when you think about your family story and the complications of your family story, I want to let you know that we have a high priest that empathizes with us. If you've ever experienced betrayal from a friend, I want you to imagine what it was like to be Jesus hanging out in a garden and praying with your friends, and all of a sudden one of your buddies shows up and there's soldiers walking behind him, and you look at your friend in the face and you say, yo, is this how you're going to betray me? You're going to betray me with a kiss. And in that moment he gets arrested, and Jesus like to experience betrayal. We have a high priest that empathizes with us. If you've ever felt misunderstood, there's a moment in the Bible where Jesus is hanging with a bunch of people that are asking him questions, and then all of a sudden his mother and brother show up and they say, hey, pull Jesus out of here. He's coming with us. And Jesus has to look at them and say, hey, my brothers and my sisters are the ones that do the will of the Father. And all of a sudden we see Jesus differentiating from his family and choosing to do what to, even though his family doesn't understand. And if you've ever been in a place where you feel misunderstood by your family, we have a high priest that empathizes with us. Because Jesus ascended, we have access to the presence of God. We have confidence that we can enter in, and we have a high priest that empathizes with us. The question then becomes, what does that mean for us? How do I experience this? How do I experience what's been represented to me? 1 Peter 2:9 says this. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. In this passage, Peter is saying that because of the mercy that you have received, you too can be a high priest. You too can represent the needs of the world to God and God to the world. You too can pray for the world and things be shifted. You too, in the work that you do, can do worship to God in the goodness that you produce. Ephesians 2, verses 8 to 10 says this. For it's by grace you have been saved through faith. It is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us to do. Paul in Ephesians is saying that you and I don't earn the goodness that we receive, that it is a gift from God directly. So Paul is saying we receive grace through faith, which is a gift from God, and then we get to do good works. Peter says in 2 Peter that we also get to be high. If you're looking at the brokenness and the destruction and the chaos of this world, and you're asking yourself, what is God's plan of redemption? God's plan for the world has always been partnership with humanity. God's plan for the world has always been for us as humanity operate as high priests, to represent the needs and the desires of this world to God, and to represent God back to the world. Now you may be asking yourself, okay, Raissa, that feels lofty and complicated and overwhelming and challenging because you don't know my story, you don't know the mistakes I've made, you don't know the failures that I've experienced. Band, you can come back up. When I was 25 years old, I was a youth pastor in Atlanta, and at that time, I worked in a church where on a typical Sunday morning, there was like a million different things kind of happening all at the same time. And a kid named Christian Medrano walks into church for the very first time, and he and I strike up a conversation about whatever it was that he was really into cars, so I'm guessing he was telling me something about his car, and I was like, no way. And then so then it goes fast. So those modifications, like that's how, okay, cool. And then what does that do? It makes it loud. So your car is fast and loud, right? Like whatever the conversation was about. And in the middle of the conversation, he mentioned something about having to get a new screen protector because his had cracked. And I was like, dude, I just ordered one from Amazon, and I have it came with 2 of them. Shout out to Amazon. Well, maybe not. I was like, it came with 2, so if you pull up next Sunday, I got you, right? He was like, bet. So next Sunday, Christian shows up. I'm like, oh, I got you. Let me go grab my screen protector from the office. Go to my office, grab the screen protector, hand it to Christian, and I move on with my life, right? Because it was like a $2 screen protector. Fast forward to 2 years ago when I was living here in Denver. I was in Atlanta speaking at a church that my brother worked at the time, and Christian showed up with a group of friends. And he was like, told you the story was going to be sad. The kids called me Rice. He's like, Rice, you changed my life. And I was like, I don't think so. In my mind, I don't think so because he was on the worship team, and my buddy Trevor was the one that was mentoring him, and so I was like, all right, tell me how. He's like, remember giving me that screen protector? And I was like, That sounds like something I would do, but I really don't remember. Well, he was like, well, when you gave me that screen protector, I ended up realizing that someone cared about me and remembered me. And so a few weeks later, I asked Trevor to join the band. A few weeks after that, my friend Marcos joined the church and joined the band. A few years later, he began to make videos and do all this stuff for different churches, but his friend Marcos, who was invited because I gave Christian a screen protector, ended up going to the church, and he met a girl named Talia in youth group, and they got married, and they had a daughter, and they started to build a life together. And then a year ago, Marcos passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And Marcos wasn't able to care for his family. But he had a community and a church that was able to wrap their arms around his wife, Talia, and his little girl. Simply because some 25-year-old accidentally got 2 screen protectors from Amazon. And that one screen protector led to one friend being invited and a young man meeting his wife and a family being built and a support system being built for when tragedy struck. So here's the reality. The work of a priest is not always glamorous and loud, but it is simple and it is generous. It is in the little things that we do that we get to represent Jesus. Jesus did the hard part. He died the death of a criminal naked on a cross. He stayed in a grave for 3 days. He rose again. He ascended to the right hand of the Father so that we, as his handiwork, his poema, his beautiful masterpieces, can do good works that were laid out for us before the foundation of the earth. And as we do good works, as we practice law well, as we do business with integrity, as we practice medicine with compassion, as we preach messages with all of our hearts, as we serve students with all, as we do these little things, we are bringing the kingdom of heaven into this earth. God's plan for humanity has always been you and me. God's plan for humanity has always been people. When God needed someone to rescue his people from slavery, he sent Moses. When God needed someone to fight giants, he sent David. When God needed a general, he sent Deborah. When God needed someone to carry him into the world, he sent Mary. Every single time God wants to do something significant or specific, he always sends people. When God wanted to reconcile South Africa from apartheid, he sent Nelson Mandela. When God wanted to bring justice and righteousness to America, he sent Martin Luther King. When God wanted to free the slaves in America, he sent Abraham Lincoln. If you are wondering what God's plan for the earth is, if you are wondering how God is going to change things, it's going to be through you and I. Jesus ascended so that we can have access. Jesus ascended so that we can have confidence. Jesus ascended so we can realize that we have empathy. And Jesus ascended so that we too can be high priests in this world. And so if you are in a place where you're asking God, what is your good plan? His good plan is you. His good plan is you. So this partnership starts, there's 2 ways that this partnership starts, and we're going to land this plane. Partnership starts with relationship. Romans tells us that while we were yet enemies of Christ, he died for us. So, if you're in this room and you want to get to know Jesus, there's nothing that is holding you back from that, because while we were yet his enemies, he died on the cross for you. He died so he could walk with you, and so he could know you, and so he could be with you. So if you want to start a relationship with Jesus, you can start that today. You can come talk to me. You can come talk to Pastor Rob. You can find Pastor Lucy if you have to go pick your kids up. But the invitation for this work starts with relationship. The second part of this invitation starts with us as believers taking our role as priests and doing good works in the earth so we can represent God to a world that is needing hope and joy and needing direction. sorry, I'm trying to think about, my brain is kind of going a few different directions, and I feel like the Lord is wanting to talk to a specific group of people in this room. I feel like there's could just be one of you, could be more. But I feel like there's one or two people in this room that have just been going through a really hard season where it feels hopeless and overwhelming, and you feel alone. And you're beginning to wonder if God has a good plan for your life specifically. He may have a good plan for the world, but what about you? And what I am sensing is I was praying the other day, and I was like kind of sitting and meditating, and my brain was going everywhere, and I felt like the Lord said, Raissa, just look at me. So in my imagination, I like pretended to be like looking at like a father figure, right? It was like actually like helping me focus. And what I in that moment is what I think I hear God saying to you in this moment. He's saying, I am here. I'm here with you in your disappointment. I'm here with you in your fear. I'm here with you in your challenge. I am here. I am here. I am Emmanuel. I am God with you. I am El Roi. I am the God who sees. I am El Shaddai. I am the God who provides. I am Jehovah Shalom. I am your peace and your wholeness. I am the God that fights for you. I am the God that sees you. I am the God that hears you. I am here. So yes, God has a good plan for humanity, but he also has a good plan for you.